not just to Ritter, but to the facts. I mean, if we turn this into a fact-based debate, as opposed to this fiction-based, this faith-based analysis that's taking place, I do believe the truth will out. I mean, the bottom line is there's no evidence of a nuclear weapons program, but sadly, Secretary of State Clinton has said, there's really nothing to discuss with the Iranians right now. No, the truth is there's everything to discuss with the Iranians. We need to determine, and this is an important issue. We have a president who says he wants nonproliferation to be at the center of his grand nuclear disarmament strategy. For that to work, there has to be a viable nonproliferation treaty, and for there to be a viable nonproliferation treaty, the United States has to be mature enough to accept an Iran operating within its full rights, including Article 4, which gives them a right to enrich uranium. We can't sit there and say, we will turn a blind eye to Israel's refusal to even consider a nonproliferation treaty signature while we condemn Iran for doing that which it is legally allowed to do. We need to get serious about nonproliferation. We need to get serious about disarmament, and we also need to get serious about the fact that this is not 2003. America simply cannot fight another war. And I'm not saying that we're going to lose the war in terms of Iran, suddenly invading the United States. Iran's a threat to nobody, but I can pretty much guarantee this: we will not prevail against Iran. And if we overextend ourselves, then we run into a new world. And the new world is a world that has been liberated, so to speak, from the tyranny of American deterrence policy, because right now we have an entire East-West equilibrium that's based upon the ability of the United States to impose its will around the world through a combination of economic, political, and military power. But the second we not just rattle the sword, but we pull the sword out and start slashing, and we don't achieve the result we want, that concept of deterrence-based policy is gone. And that you're going to see is going to cause a huge ripple, and we don't need to push that issue right now. Our economy's in tatters. We're in the basis of rebuilding relationships based on trust with the world. We don't need to throw that all away on a misadventure based upon a lie. Iran is not a threat. The Islamic Republic is not a threat, and its nuclear program is not a threat. And that's what we need to focus on, not some esoteric debate on whether or not Iran's provision of a letter in 2003 which talked about voluntary compliance with additional protocols in the new Code 3.1 is somehow legally binding if the Iranian parliament hasn't ratified it yet.
Well, now, back in 2005, you wrote a couple articles for Al Jazeera about this, and we talked about this on the radio back then. And you said basically what our government frames as Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C for how to deal with Iran. Plan A, get the E3, the British, French, Germans to negotiate on our behalf. Plan B, threaten them more sanctions, whatever it is. Plan C, bomb them. And you said this is not right. What this really is step 1, 2, and 3.
That's right.
Because we all know that Iran ain't making nuclear weapons, well, people who know, the general public's illusions notwithstanding. This is simply an excuse for regime change. And what they have to do is pretend to negotiate and pretend to say, look, we tried to deal with them and they won't deal. Just like they did with Saddam Hussein. Hey, if he was disarming, we would see him, in fact, George Bush said he would take his weapons to a parking lot and say, here you go, IAEA. And the fact that he hadn't done that means that he's still hiding them, right? Same kind of thing here. And that basically the thing is they just want a war. But here's my question for you. Dick Cheney and John Hanna and David Wurmser are gone. They're not running the vice president's office anymore. How could it be that the craziest of right-wing Likudnik policies still reigns in the Obama White House, Scott?
Well, because we have a president named Barack Obama who doesn't have any experience in this area, who is running scared. He's trying to do a lot. He has health care reform. He has a lot of domestic reform. He has a collapse in the economy that he's trying to manage. He has a war in Iraq he's trying to get out of. He has a fight in Afghanistan that he doesn't know what he wants to do. Do we send more troops? Do we send even more troops? Do we pull troops back? then we've got missile defense. I didn't like that, but it's there. If I pull back, I'm going to be called weak. At some point in time, the president is being advised that he has to be strong, and he's picked the easiest topic. Iran is a throwaway politically for him, meaning that he doesn't have to put anything at risk by taking the stance that he does. Yes, you and I and others know that what he's putting at risk is the survival of our nation as we know it now, because we're not going to come out of a war with Iran smelling pretty. It's going to be very ugly, and there will be a lot of detrimental impact on it. But he's not seeing that. He's seeing, how do I look presidential? I mean, the absurdity of what he did last Friday, the embarrassment that should have been all over that. Iran does what it's legally required to. It declares a facility that U.S. intelligence community was speculating might be related to nuclear. Remember, no nuclear material has been inserted in this facility, so it's not a nuclear facility. It's a hole in the ground. And the U.S. intelligence community is monitoring this hole in the ground, and maybe they have some SIGINT or signals intercepts. Maybe they have some human that at some point in time centrifuges might be going there, so they're going, aha, we caught them, and then wham, they get the rug pulled out from them when Iran suddenly does what it's legally obligated to do, declares the existence of a facility that at some point in the future may have nuclear material inserted. And suddenly Obama's going, wait a minute, what do I do? And his national security advisor pulls him in. You've got to look presidential. We've got to do something. Dramatic news conference, and it's getting all the headlines, but it's absurd in the extreme. There's no story here except, and this is the real story, Obama is a weak president who's unable to stand up to the well-entrenched forces that are basically pursuing an Israeli-based policy of tearing down the theocracy. And it's not just Israel. Saudi Arabia is involved in this as well. The Saudi Arabians view the Shia Islamic Republic of Iran as a mortal threat to their own, failed efforts to define themselves as the center of the Muslim world. A lot of money went in, and this is the other story that seems to have been swept under the rug here. A lot of money, Saudi money, American money, British money, went into trying to shape an election, to engineer an election result last June in Iran.
Yeah, elaborate on that, please.
Under Bush in 2006, Condoleezza Rice and the CIA and the state and the Department of Defense pour in about $60 million into this democratization effort. They bring in a guy named Jared Cohen, who wrote an interesting book called Children of the Jihad. He heads up an effort that he terms digital democracy, where you're going to use the tools of the modern age, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, to project Western values into these areas where democracy is not flourishing. Because, as Jared Cohen says, all teenagers are the same and want the same things, and all we have to do is expose them to Western-style democracy through the miracle of modern technology, and they will rise up and take matters into their own hand. We spent between $30 and $40 million trying to engineer an inspection result. an election result. The Saudis poured in, almost $100 million into confronting what they call the Iran project, starting first with engineering an election in Lebanon to defeat Hezbollah, and then moving on to help engineer an election result in Iran to get, a Rafsanjani-based Mousavi government in place to replace Ahmadinejad and ultimately undermine the supreme leader in Khamenei. It failed miserably. And now these guys, the United States, Saudi Arabia, and others, are left with egg on their face. I mean, the best they can do is get 10,000 rich young kids from northern Tehran to demonstrate in the street. This is in a nation of 70 million. A recent poll came out, and it's a Western-based organization that did the poll. They say that 4 out of 5 Iranians today support Ahmadinejad and the supreme leader. Iran's survival in the aftermath of this election, the Islamic Republic's survival, is a huge embarrassment to the United States. And so the United States, which has a policy of regime change that has been inherited by the Obama administration and indeed